Nothing was a done deal then. There was a lot of discussions going on.
There was an accusation that maybe blindsided the late Queen.
There's no question about blindsiding, not just the Queen, but his father, his brother, everybody in the royal family were blindsided.
We're all working together for the monarchy. It's not for you, it's for the monarchy. And I think Meghan just never understood that.
The royals wanted these two to stay in the institution because they were great assets for the royal family.
I think it's a mistake. I think they would have had a better life. Obviously, less criticism, and for their children.
They took the coward's way out.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive Rewind, where we delve back into the files and relive some of the highlights and lowlights of royal family history. Remember to subscribe to us here on the Royal Exclusive YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. I'm Matt Wilkinson, the Sun's royal editor, and today I'm joined by royal experts Ingrid Seward and Charlie Ray to look back at one of the most momentous changes in recent royal history. 6 years ago this month, Harry and Meghan shocked the world with a historic and poorly timed announcement. Prince Harry and his new Hollywood actress wife Meghan declared they were stepping down as senior members of the royal family and moving to North America to pursue a quieter life away from media intrusion, but inevitable towards mega money deals with Netflix and Spotify. Their announcement on the 8th of January 2020 resulted in Sandringham summits and a dissatisfied Queen who was equally as surprised by the news. Megxit, January 2020, surely one of the biggest royal news bombshells that has happened in decades. Take us back to January, before the announcement was made, before we led to this huge bombshell that we can't stop talking about. What was the atmosphere like? Harry and Meghan weren't happy, were they?
They were in Canada. They were on an island in Canada where they'd gone to spend Christmas. They wanted some private time with their baby son, Archie, and they got privacy for a bit. And then the address of where they were leaked out, and of course the world's press then descended, and that kind of started to fall apart a bit.
Throughout all this time, Ingrid, we knew that, or we later found out that there were talks, there were discussions over Christmas. There were, when they were in Canada, you know, in their little bolt hole that was the press suddenly found out where they were. There were moves, weren't there, Charlie? There were big talks for them to break away from the royal family behind the scenes.
There were phone calls and emails and, you know, whatever other method you wanted to use. The discussions were going on. Meghan and Harry clearly wanted one thing. The royals wanted clearly another thing. So these discussions were going on in the background. Quietly, we didn't really know about them all that much until much later, but there certainly were chats going on.
Harry was having a lot of chats with his father, who was then the Prince of Wales, obviously, and he was, and the Queen also, you know, was thinking of expanding their role. She had this vision of them being, you know, part of the Commonwealth, her beloved Commonwealth. And she'd have given them a role in the Commonwealth as sort of young ambassadors. And she wanted to enlarge on that. And then there was thoughts that maybe they could go and live in a Commonwealth country if they, you know, they were so unhappy in the UK. So it wasn't a done deal. Nothing was a done deal then. There was a lot of discussions going on.
And then the Sun learnt that these discussions were going on. I think we gave them a bit of time, we were waiting for a response, and then we put it on our front page. I think the headline was, "We are off again." They were going to leave the royal family. And that was a huge bombshell. But what came later, I think, surprised everybody, because the Sussexes made their exit announcement, was it on Instagram?
Well, they went to, apparently they went to Buckingham Palace. I've just reread this in Harry's book, Spare. They went to Buckingham Palace and they spent the day there working out a statement. So this was all done, with the knowledge of presumably some members of the press team at Buckingham Palace. Not that they were going to make their own statement. So they were getting a statement prepared. And then they decided that they were going to put it out on Instagram because that was really the only thing available to them.
Was this impetuous? Because there were accusations. This is they put it on their Sussex Royal Instagram page, basically saying that they've chosen to carve out a progressive new role within this institution, and they're basically off. And there was an accusation that maybe blindsided the late Queen.
Oh, there's no question about blindsided, not just the Queen, but his father, his brother, everybody in the royal family were blindsided. We were blindsided, if you like, as well, because we didn't expect it to come out that way, because it wasn't the normal way for these royal proclamations or edicts to come out.
Yep.
They usually came out from the palace, Buckingham Palace, under the guise of the Queen or the Prince of Wales. So
it all happened so quickly.
Very quickly.
I was really shocked. I thought, what's going on? I mean, most of us didn't really know what was going on. I don't think certainly the
some
Queen
of the royal household knew what was going on.
No.
Well, I think it's important to say as well that up until we found out about all these discussions and everything else, we thought everything in the family was doing well. I mean, Harry and Meghan were doing very, very well. We talked about, other royals and the people turning out for them. Well, Harry and Meghan were getting superstar status beforehand. They were getting good press as well. Everybody loved them. We had high hopes for Harry and Meghan. They were going to be key members of the royals, the working royals. And it all just suddenly went poof.
It did.
I think the problem, a little bit of a problem started when Archie was born. And they didn't do the formal announcement. In fact, they didn't announce that the baby was born until after the baby was born, which is something that had never happened.
But I think there were signs beforehand, because I suspect as well that when Meghan and Harry were doing all the good things and turning out and everything else, suddenly Meghan realised that she was becoming a superstar. Where she made a mistake was she thought she was a bigger superstar than William and Catherine, and a bigger superstar than Charles and the Queen. And they were doing things as well. I mean, one of the things that the royals do is, if they're one of the key members of the royal family is doing a royal job, you don't interrupt it. You don't suddenly come up with something else. But that's what Meghan did.
And they've continued to do that, actually.
And continue to do that.
Like there's one wonderful remark, which I'll just very quickly repeat. Prince Philip said to Diana, "This is not a popularity contest. We're all working together for the monarchy. It's not for you, it's for the monarchy." And I think Meghan just never understood that.
No, I agree.
Well, the day after the Sussexes' Instagram announcement, which shocked everybody, the Sun's front page was Megxit, and it's a term that lives on. We all know this phrase Megxit and what it means. But then we had the Sandringham summits. There were several weekends. The royal family and all their aides, they gathered at Sandringham to really hammer out exactly what the terms are of Harry and Meghan leaving. And I know you've been looking through Spare recently and seeing Harry's side of these negotiations. What did you learn from that?
Well, Harry approached his grandmother and said he'd like to talk to her, and he rang her up and she agreed that she would see him the first week of January, whenever it was. And then he got a call saying, from her private secretary saying, "Well, I'm sorry, but Her Majesty can't see you. She's got some engagements." And then Harry rang back the Queen and said, "Well, what's going on?" So it was a bit of a jumble. And then she said, "Well, don't come to Sandringham now. I'll see you at the end of the month."
And at these summits, Charlie, I remember Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, didn't turn up, and nor did Meghan. But what did they decide in these talks?
Well, there was 5 options. There was 5 options that were in discussion. One was the status quo, that they stay within members of the royal family and become working members, to the hard Megxit, if you like, of you're out and you're not royal members of the... You don't have royal working titles anymore, and you don't have the HRH titles. You just lose them, and you lose your security as well. And that was the option that ended up, being put into practice.
Harry and Meghan didn't want that.
They didn't lose their titles, and they didn't lose their HRH. The HRH was put into abeyance.
Abeyance, yeah.
And they had to agree not to do anything commercial which would damage the image of the royal family.
That's a bit of a laugh, wasn't it?
Well, it's a difficult one to judge, isn't it, that term? But they didn't want that. They wanted a half-in, half-out deal.
They did.
Yeah, I mean, they were equally shocked at the severity of these demands.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been patently ridiculous for them to be half in, half out if they were living in Canada as they were at that, or they were going to be at that time. And remember, let's not forget that they went to Canada because they said they would never set foot in the United States because Donald Trump was president and they didn't want to be there. Well, guess what happened? So it would have been a bit difficult for them to carry out royal duties while either in Canada or Montecito. It can't happen. Where were they going to go?
I suppose the issue also in the negotiations, which I wasn't there, obviously, but if they want to go away and appear on Netflix and they want to go away and do Oprah interviews, they can't be. I think the fear is that if you were doing a media career and selling you're literally selling the fact that you work for the royals to make money in California.
Well, that's exactly what happened, wasn't it? They basically, I mean, the Oprah interview was already tied up, which I didn't, none of us realised at the time.
Well, why couldn't they have a half in, half out deal? I was just trying to touch on it then, just trying to interpret why they can't, you know, be working royals but also live in the US and pursue their own finances.
Because right at the start, one of the key points that they wanted to make was they wanted to live their own lives, have their own money, earn their own money. Well, you can't earn the money that they're earning from places like Netflix, as Ingrid just said. You can't have two paymasters. You can't have the royals and Netflix and Oprah Winfrey and everything else when you're earning that sort of money. It just doesn't correlate together. So that's why one of the reasons why it all fell apart.
I think it's quite telling that it was a year transition, but the Sussexes ended a couple of months early, because basically they had the Oprah Winfrey interview lined up.
And of course, the Queen was absolutely very upset by this because she had such great hopes for them. So she gave them, you know, if your other life doesn't work out, you know, within 6 months, I think it was 6 months.
Sure.
You'll be very welcome back. And I think a part of her hoped that they would come back and thought they might.
But the royals wanted these two to stay in the institution because they were great assets for the royal family. Can you imagine if they'd stayed where they were? You know, can you imagine what it would have been like? It would have been a really tight group of people that people would have enjoyed. You know, Meghan's lack of popularity only happened because of Megxit and everything else that happened. I mean, the Oprah Winfrey interview was disgraceful on her part, particularly, and it was one of the main central reasons why people took against her.
Was Megxit the right decision? The hard Megxit did it work? Has it worked for Harry and Meghan? Has it worked for the royal family?
I think it's worked for the royal family.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's especially worked for Prince William, because we didn't know that he was falling out with his brother at the time. We didn't really know that story at the time. And I think it's worked very well for them. I think it's put a lot of pressure on other members of the royal family because, you know, it's tightened the band of working royals. But then Charles said that when he came to the throne, he wanted a
slimmed-down monarchy.
He wanted a slimmed-down monarchy, but he imagined that Harry would be part of it.
But exactly, and Harry going away with Meghan meant a promotion for the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh, who have done brilliantly to help out the royal family and do some of the jobs that these two would have been doing. But, you know, that's the way life is.
And then you've got the Gloucesters who've done really well.
The Gloucesters
and
have
then
done well.
the Duke of Kent, who's absolutely brilliant at 90, is still doing royal engagements.
Was it the right decision for Harry and Meghan?
No, I don't think so. I think they should have realised what they had there. They would have had a great life in enjoying helping the institution and therefore helping Britain. Remember, she was supposed to be taking lessons and to becoming a British subject. Well, that went by the wall and everything else. You know, and I get to the point where her welcoming into the royal family was fantastic. When you compare it to the way Diana was treated and the way Fergie was treated as members coming in, as in effect commoners coming into the royal family, you know, they were treated terribly by those men in grey suits and so-called, and their own husbands didn't really help them out. I have to say that both Harry and William didn't stand for any of that sort of tosh that was going on that criticised their wives or their girlfriends at that time.
Yeah, I agree with Charlie. I think it's a mistake. I think they would have had a better life, obviously less criticism, and for their children. They don't even know their grandfather, who is, after all, a monarch, and they don't know their cousins. And I think that eventually...
That is a tragedy.
It's a tragedy. But a lot of people that say have an English member of the family want their children educated in England, and that might well happen.
Might well happen.
Harry might well...
That's the rumour.
Yeah.
And just finally, before we wrap up, we're 6 years later. 6 years later from Megxit, we're now hearing that Harry is very close to getting his security back. OK, so we might actually get... That was one of the terms on Megxit. Once you leave, sorry, you're out. And we also hear all these persistent rumours that Harry wants to come back and do more. They keep being denied, but they won't go away, that he wants to come back and do some kind of royal roles. Are we in danger of rewriting Megxit, or do we leave it as it is?
I think we leave it as it is, really. I mean, I don't think he should get the royal protection, which is taxpayer funded, back again. He's got his own security system. When he comes over here, he has the luxury of the Met Police checking out, making sure there's no serious threats, but he has his own protection. There is nothing that can happen now that will rewrite that at all.
I think that they are happy where they are.
Yeah.
Harry's 40 years old. He's living in the most beautiful place, one of the most beautiful places in the world. The only worry is the children, and that Archie's 5, I believe, and that will come within the next few years. That will worry them a lot.
Just one point on the children. It won't be too long before these two are able to look on Google, as most children do, about anything to do, especially if they've got, celebrity parents, what it was like, what went on. I think they would be appalled to find out what went on for these two as members of the royal family and quitting the way they did. They took the coward's way out. Well, Megxit was signed 6 years ago, but we're still feeling reverberations. It's still not over. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate that. Pleasure.
Right, that's all we have time for on Royal Exclusive Rewind. But join me next time for some royal nostalgia when we open the files and relive another iconic moment.